Hi guys, welcome back to On The Mend. This is a podcast where we look back at life's toughest moments to figure out how to move forward. And today's guest is known to millions as a presenter, broadcaster and writer who's been on the air for more than 3 decades. I mean, that's pretty epic, isn't it?
Yeah, it's more than that, actually.
Is it really?
Yeah, on the air since 1976 when I joined the local radio station up in Carlisle.
Wow.
And then I joined Border Television, which was over the road in Carlisle in 78. So it's getting on for half a century.
It's getting on for half a century. Yes, mate, that's epic. Everyone, it's Richard Madeley.
Hi. Hello, everybody. Hi. Nice to be here. Hi.
Absolutely. Right, okay. How are you doing today, mate?
I'm fine. I'm recovering from a broken arm, which as you can see, I've still got all the wrappings on. Fell over in France speed walking. Should never speed walk at my age in Birkenstocks. If you're going to do it, wear decent footwear. And I went over and smashed the bone, and I needed 2 operations to get it right. But I think we're on the mend. I think it's going to be okay.
Great, perfect.
Should be playing guitar again before you know it.
Yes. And you just said you started on local radio, right?
Well, actually, I started in local newspapers.
Oh, right.
My dad was a journalist, a newspaper journalist. He was just too young to fight in the war, but he did 2 years national service. And wherever he was based, he used to go and beg for sort of unpaid work at the local paper because he wanted to be a hack when he came out. So he used to write articles for the Leighton Buzzard Gazette and the Little Chugworth of Times, whatever. Yeah. And then when he came out, he emigrated to Canada and he worked for DC Thomson newspapers. Met my mum there, brought her back here, worked for a while in papers in the UK, and then he went to Ford as a press officer. But he used to tell me all these fabulous stories. This was back in the days when journalism wasn't tacky. It was actually quite glamorous.
Yeah.
To be a newspaper journalist was actually quite funky.
I mean,
now it's seen as the lowest of the low of the low, you know.
Yeah.
But then it definitely had a cachet to it. And Dad used to tell me all these stories about the stories that he'd covered and the dramas that he'd been at and witnessed and all the rest of it and the court cases he'd covered. And I just loved the sound of it. And I knew that was what I wanted to be. Yeah. So after I'd done my O-levels, as we call them, my GCSEs, I was 16. And before I went back later that summer to school to do my A-levels, and the plan was to go to uni after 2 or 3 years, I wrote to the local paper, the Brentwood Argus in Essex, and asked for what today we'd call work experience. Could I have a week making coffee, sweeping the floors, and just seeing how a real newsroom operated? And I got this incredibly rude letter back, basically saying, "Fuck off, kid. This is a working newspaper. We don't have space for a 16-year-old schoolboy, so piss off." And then I got another letter by the second post, because in those days there were 2 posts, and it was full of apologies. Same guy saying, "Oh, look, I'm really sorry about what I just wrote to you. It's press day and the press has stopped working and I thought we weren't going to get our edition out. I was in a rights day and I should never have spoken to you like that. Come in tomorrow morning and I'll give you 20 minutes and I'll explain how it works, but I can't give you a week. But I'll talk to you for 20 minutes about how working as a local newspaper reporter might work for you." So I thought, great. So I put my only suit on the next day and I went in and did 20 minutes with him. And because I knew about papers, because of Dad, I wasn't completely green, you know, and asked a few questions and made a few comments. And at the end of it, I've never forgotten it, he lit a cigarette. I said, "Do you want to start tomorrow?" And I thought he meant for the week. And I said, "Well, until Friday." He said, No. We'll take you on for 3 years. He said, "You'll be an indentured reporter, a cub reporter. We'll send you to college every 10 months. You'll do 2 months for law, public administration, shorthand. And after 3 years, you'll be a qualified journalist. You'll be 19, you'll be ahead of the pack. Yes or no, but I need to know by tonight." And so I went home and told my mum. He said, "No, you're going to uni." And then my dad came home and he said, "Well, hang on, this could be life-changing." And he called every journalist that he knew in Fleet Street and said, "This is my son's position. What would you do?" And they all said, if he knows it's what he wants to do at the end, you know, when he's done his English degree or whatever, do it now. Yeah. So I did. So I never went back to school and joined the local paper in 1972 when I was 16.
At 16 years old?
Yeah.
More conversations like this coming up in season 3. Watch wherever you get your podcasts.
Wow, isn't that interesting? Because you're right. Why go and study something for such a long time if you can go and do it right now?
Exactly. So I've always had not a jaundiced view of university because, of course, it's a wonderful thing. Yeah. But I think you need to think carefully about why you're going and what the end game is. Anyway, it fell into my lap and, I made it.
Yeah. I mean, amazing. I've got a few friends who went for a similar thing when they were going to go and study media, you know, to work in telly. And then I just got a job as a runner. And like by the time their mates have finished their media thing, they're already high up.
They're junior producers.
Absolutely. Exactly. It's just bizarre. It's
there's no substitute for the real thing.
No, absolutely not. You know, so when did that happen?
Well, Okay, so I did 3 or 4 years on papers, ended up as the deputy editor of the East London Advertiser. And newspapers and Fleet Street was beckoning. I was freelancing for Fleet Street, but local radio was just really kicking off at that point. It was the mid-'70s. And it just sounded incredibly exciting. Yeah. So I wrote to every local radio station that I could, and they all wrote back and said, I'm sure this wouldn't happen today, but they all basically said, you're 19, you're too young. Except BBC Radio Carlisle, who gave me an interview and then gave me a job as a reporter. So that was it. I left papers, and I did a couple of years at Radio Carlisle, and then I did a couple of years at Border Television as a reporter in the newsroom, straight news, nightly news. Went down to Yorkshire Television, did 2 years there, and then got poached by Granada in Manchester. So I left Leeds and went to Manchester. So I was like a ping pong ball in the north, getting all this very intense TV experience. Working on the nightly news shows, which were much bigger then than they are now. They had much bigger budgets than they do now. Joined Granada in 1982 and met Judy Finnegan, who was the main female presenter reporter in the newsroom. And we just hit it off. And my marriage was crumbling and her marriage was crumbling. And after about 18 months, we realised we were more than just, good colleagues and good friends. We were falling for each other. So we ended up getting married and having kids. And I became stepfather to Judy's twins by her first marriage. So there were the 6 of us in this kind of family unit, and we were presenting the nightly news show together. And ITV decided it wanted to ape the American model of a daytime morning live talk show that could address anything. You could interview the president, or you could talk about how to make fantastic muffins. The agenda was wide open. So we went to America and we had a look at some of the shows there, and we came back, and Granada pitched for this show to ITV, and we got it. So it felt real.
It definitely
and because we were married, and we were a real couple with real children. We weren't a faux couple on television, look at the chemistry. Of course we had chemistry. We were married.
Yeah.
So that gave it reality as well. And I think that's what punched through. I think that's why This Morning, I think, is still going today, because it just got such an amazing launch.
Yeah.
The velocity that we established with that location, and with the fact that we were really married and we could talk about real family issues for real. And often people could tell that we'd had a row. And that was real too. Yeah. I mean, we used to try and hide it, but we used to drive across from Manchester to Liverpool every morning, and sometimes you'd have a blazing row in the car, and you'd get to the studios, and she'd march off to make up, and I'd march off to my dressing room, and we wouldn't speak. And then we'd meet on the floor for a quick rehearsal, and then we'd be on air. And we'd think that we were hiding the fact that we could barely look at each other. But within about 20 minutes, the girls in the phone-in room used to say they used to get calls from people saying they've had a row, haven't they? Oh, yes. And people could tell, we called them Richard and Judy watchers, and they used to watch for signs, It was very sweet, really.
Yeah.
So that was real too.
And but the viewers were so invested in you two, right?
Yes.
It really becomes like a wider family. Where they're watching you every day. They kind of like...
Yeah, and I think that's because we were addressing real stuff, real concerns. And we got a lot of flack for it to begin with. In the wider media, we were seen as kind of rather pathetic daytime television with a rather pathetic soft agenda. But we were always unapologetic about what the show was for and what it could do. So, whether it was interviewing a retired Margaret Thatcher or Bill Clinton or Hillary Clinton, or, as I say, talking about muffins or makeup or fashion, it was as real as anybody's actual real day, which flits from one kind of reality to the next, and that's what we did in our 2.5 hours on air, and that seemed to strike a chord with people.
Did you ever find that hard to kind of flick around? Like, because I sometimes remember watching you going, you're doing a cooking segment, then you're talking about something really serious, and then you kind of remove it, like something's really traumatic you're going through, and then you're great to over to.
No, I loved that, and so did Judy. It was like being at a really, dinner parties are passé now. Who has dinner parties anymore? But it was like being at a really interesting dinner party, where 1 minute you might be talking about, I don't know, the price of fish, and the next about the big political story of the day, and the next somebody talking about their divorce, and the next someone saying where did you get that fantastic dress you're wearing tonight? Just like I said earlier, like a billiard ball bouncing around the table in all directions. And that's what the show could do, and I loved that. I loved that. And we were both journalists as well, so we knew how to follow a story and follow the line of a story and how to crucially, how to sell a story, how to sell something into a break, saying, right, after the break, we're going to be talking to so-and-so about, you're not going to want to miss this, about blah, blah, blah. And we'd kind of hope that people would stay over the commercial break and come back. Eclectic is the word. You would just hop around from one little nugget of reality to the next, and it was enormously stimulating.
Did you suddenly realise you were famous?
I knew what it was like to be recognised in the street.
Right.
I developed that sort of awareness. I also knew that it didn't mean anything.
Yeah.
I mean, thank God. I mean, there are some people on television, particularly for some reason in kind of current affairs television, who think that sort of being famous, being recognised, confers something special.
Yeah.
A kind of superiority of some kind. And it's just nonsense.
Yeah.
It's just
It's
a
a
returning
figment of other people's
sonar echo.
imagination.
You just happen. You're on people's screens in the corner of the living room. These days on their phones. So of course they're going to recognise you in the street. What does that? Does that mean that in some way, shape, or form you're better than them, or better than anyone else, or better than a teacher or a doctor or the bloke who delivers the post? Of course it doesn't. It just means that you happen to work in a medium which makes you recognisable. That's all it is. So and to this day, I never sort of took too much notice of it. It was just an inevitable consequence of the job that I enjoyed doing.
Right.
I wasn't chasing fame.
So it wasn't tedious? You didn't find it annoying?
No. I find that really quite annoying, actually, when I hear people complaining about being approached these days for selfies. It used to be autographs, but now it's selfies, or people coming up and wanting a chat. Well, I'm sorry, but again, that's the game you're in. And if you're going to be Mr. or Mrs. Nice Guy or Nice Lady in your persona on camera, well, you better follow that through in real life. Because not to do it is just dishonest. So, no, and in fact, it's usually a privilege. I mean, occasionally, yes, you'll get someone coming up who is a nuisance. But that's very rare. Most people who come up for a chat have got something interesting to say, or an interesting question to ask, And I knew I like people, and I like, it's one of the reasons I'm here today. I like socialising, I like chatting. I could talk for England. So no, I've never seen the recognition factor as anything other than actually quite pleasant. Not because it makes me feel special, but because it just means I get a chance to talk to people.
Yeah, and you're just being yourself, right? So it's like, being yourself is so important, but then over the years you kind of had to deal with kind of negative headlines about you.
Oh yeah.
So it's like, well, I'm just doing my thing and I'm having to deal with this. What's that like?
Well, you have to quickly decide whether that's going to matter to you. I mean, the negative headlines thing, the jeering, if you like, the sneering, the piss-taking, the misreporting, and all of that. That all comes with the territory. You have to decide whether that's sufficiently negative and unpleasant to stop you doing your job. That's the first thing. And then you have to work out whether it matters. And I think it's that latter part of the equation which is really important, because it doesn't matter. Obviously, if there's good cause, like, I don't know, Greg Wallace, all the negative coverage about him, well, I'm sorry, he's behaved badly and he's going to get negative coverage. So he has to live with that. But when it's just gossip, and rumour and speculation, and just sometimes the sheer nastiness, and gossip, you have to decide whether that in itself matters, and it doesn't. And looking back at, you talked about the number of years I've been in this job, I have never not been offered a contract, or lost a contract, or lost an opportunity, or lost a job because of a negative headline. No one's ever called me up. No editor or producer or executive producer or head of a channel has ever said, Richard, I saw that piece in the Daily Mail about you yesterday. I'm afraid that means we can't use you. I mean, it's just nonsense. So you realise that actually you're kind of bulletproof from that kind of stuff. And also, and this is just to finish it, you shouldn't take yourself that seriously. And, if there is a negative, at first it's quite painful. It takes a little while to get used to. But after a while, if somebody wants to say, I think Richard Madeley is a prick, well, that's called free speech and fair comment. I mean, there are presenters on television who I don't know personally, but I see, and we've all got our sort of our hate figures that I see when they pop up, sitting at home, and I hate them. There's no logical reason for it at all. But I just look and think, I can't stand that so-and-so, and I'll turn over. So if I'm allowed to think like that about a TV presenter, well, then anyone's allowed to think that way about me. So you mustn't take yourself seriously. You must think, I think I'm quite good at my job. But that doesn't mean that gives me a free pass, and that people aren't free to hate me.
Ever feel like you're burning the candle at every end?
That was me on tour, back-to-back shows, brutal travel, barely any recovery time. And let's face it, I'm not 25 anymore. I mean, my body was like, mate, what are you doing? So before the next leg, I switched things up and started taking Vitals by Heights. Just 2 capsules a day, packed with 20 essential nutrients for brain and body, omega-3s, B vitamins, D3, all the good stuff. I mean, Heights has massively transformed the way I tour. I used to have trouble sleeping, not be able to fall asleep, be wide awake for hours, or fall asleep, wake up in the middle of the night, not be able to get back to sleep, then have to do a whole new day the next day, feeling pretty groggy. You know, Vitals has changed that for me. This isn't some gimmick brand either. Heights is formulated by doctors, backed by science, and trusted by elite performers. There are literally thousands of 5-star reviews to go along with it, right? If you want to simplify your routine and feel your best, head to heights.com/OTM and use the code OTM20 for 20% off your first subscription. Trust me, you'll feel the difference. Hi guys, just want to take a moment to thank the sponsors of today's episode. They are London Nootropics. Now they've got a few different adaptogenic coffee blends, which I love. And basically what I love about them the most is that each one of them fits into a different part of my day. Take Flow Coffee, right? When I'm sat down prepping for guests for a podcast and I've got pages of research in front of me and my head's all over the place, Flow is what helps me lock in. It gives me that clear focus without feeling scattered. Then there's Zen Coffee. I have this when I'm coming off stage from a gig, right? My adrenaline is through the roof. Zen gives me calming energy. It just helps me feel chilled, focused, and balanced again. No jitters. If you're sensitive to caffeine, this is the one for you. And finally, Mojo Coffee. That's one I'll grab before a workout, right? This is my best friend. It's all natural ingredients and it just gives me that extra bit of strength and stamina without any junk you'd find in an energy drink. For me, London Nootropics isn't just coffee, right? It's become part of how I manage my energy through the day, helping me get the most out of it with the best in class ingredients. If you're interested, head to londonnootropics.com and check them out. I mean, being such a kind of like, saying it's like part of the family on television, right? Your family has also been in the limelight, you know, like, so how do you feel like, because as a father, you know, seeing your family be put into kind of thrust into this job that you chose, you know, like I have the same thing. I've got 3 kids, right? And it's like, and it's just must be quite a weird kind of like transition to going, oh, right, now I'm opening up my family into this. You know, is that a different way you think about it?
I would say that it hasn't been a problem at all.
Yeah.
Because the kids, I mean, we started doing This Morning in 1988 and we became kind of national figures then as opposed to regional, kind of local celebrities, you know.
Yeah.
And let me think, Jack would have been 2 and Chloe would have been 1. So they grew up from, you know, the moment they were sentient, really, with the kind of everyday acceptance that their mum and dad were on the telly and that you know, when we went to pick them up at school, their friends' parents would recognise us and friends would recognise us. And to them, it was their normal.
Yeah.
They could also see as they got older, because we tried not to screen them from too much from the reality of the downside of what we did. They could sometimes see very unpleasant stories written about us, a profile about the show that we did and how crap we were and what a terrible show it was and what useless presenters we were and how stupid I was and all the rest of it. And they could see that it didn't bother us. Or at the very least, we could handle it, we could manage it. So when from time to time, as they grew up, they themselves fell into the spotlight. Although, you know, that doesn't happen that often. On the whole, the media's quite respectful of children's innocence, if you like, and the fact that they haven't chosen this path. So it didn't happen that often. In fact, I can't really think of a serious incident when it did. But if they were sucked into it in any way, shape or form, because they knew that we were unaffected by it and therefore it didn't hurt, they weren't affected by it. Yeah. Now, to some extent, Chloe's gone into the public eye with the work that she's done. But again, she's done that with the background knowledge of how to handle it. My son, Jack, is my manager and agent, and he works, for, as you know, for a big management company, managing talent and coming up with program ideas for talent. So he's on the fringes of that world. And my stepsons, Tom and Dan, are completely outside it. They're twins. Dan is he's actually a director. He directs pop videos, music videos, and commercials. And his twin Tom works out of Boston in America. He's basically head of global sales for New Balance, the shoe company. So he's very non-media. So they've all ploughed their own furrows. And as I say, when the if you like, the publicity monster has tapped on their shoulders, they've known how to handle it. And of course, they could always turn to us for advice. Chloe in particular, because she's probably got the highest profile of all of them. Yeah. And she was married to James Haskell, of course, the rugby player. That attracted a lot of attention, which again, she was able to handle. You know?
Yeah. I think that's the thing with the media. They're like, all right, okay, this, and then we can add this, and then we can make something else. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's like,
and we all, to some extent, we all play that game. In the media,
absolutely.
So you can't complain too loudly about it.
Yeah.
But I would say that I wouldn't say that any of my kids, and I'm not sort of being a wishful thinker on this, but I honestly don't think that any of them have had anything like a negative life experience because of what their mum and dad do.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I mean,
and you could ask them, and I think they would tell you the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, well, Chloe, I've just got something written here that we found that Chloe said in an interview that she felt like people didn't like her because of you both being her parents.
Well, if she said that, that's what she thought at the time. But you know what? I think if you are to ask her that question now, she'd probably give you a different answer.
Yeah. I mean, there's times and places, isn't there? Times when you're in certain time frames in your mind, I suppose. You know, I mean, and I mean, this show is on the mend, right? And I'm a recovering drug addict and alcoholic, you know, so I've kind of like had that.
What were you using?
Cocaine was my problem. Right. I mean, alcohol was my downfall, you know, but then then cocaine was a massive problem for me too at different points.
I never have. I have to say, ever. I've never even smoked a joint because I was a very, very heavy smoker until I was 40. At one point, I was on 60 a day. I was on 3 packs a day when I was in my 20s, which is ridiculous. Because I have a very addictive personality, I knew that, and cigarettes prove that to me. So I've always been terrified of a heavier stuff.
Right.
I mean, I drink a bit. I certainly drink wine. I drink alcohol, but you know, I'm okay with it. But in terms of cocaine, or you know, pop, as we used to call it, I've always steered clear of it because it terrifies me. Because I've got a horrible feeling I would fall into the same elephant trap as you did. And I don't trust myself, so I've never gone near it.
It's hellishly Moorish.
I know it is. I know, and so are cigarettes. You know,
absolutely.
And cigarettes, in their own way, are just as dangerous.
Yeah. How long have you don't smoke anymore?
No, basically I started when I was 16 when I joined the paper because everybody smoked on the paper. And it was back in the early 70s, everybody smoked, basically. I think about 80%.
In the doctor's office in the 70s, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. And you got to the point very quickly where you were covering a story, you came back to your typewriter at the desk, and you couldn't write your story without getting a fag on the go. Yeah. So you were chain smoking as you were typing. As I say, everybody smoked. And it was kind of part of the journalistic culture, that whole Humphrey Bogart thing, you know, the fag drooping out your mouth as you ask hard-nosed questions, all that shit. But I became horribly addicted to it. And what stopped me was interviewing Nigella Lawson's first husband, John Diamond. Right. John Diamond was a journalist and a very, very good writer. He wrote for The Guardian, and he got throat and mouth cancer because of smoking when he was in his late 30s or early 40s. And he was dying. And he was writing a diary about dying for The Guardian. And it was a tragedy. And yet it was gripping, the way that he talked about his shortening days and his suffering. And he came on this morning when he probably had about 3 weeks to live. And by that stage, he'd had half of his tongue cut away because of the tumours. And he'd had a lot of his esophagus taken away. And he was in a bad way. He was constantly dribbling down one side of his mouth. And he was very hard to understand because of the surgery on his tongue. And about halfway through this live interview, which was gripping, I said to him something slightly foolish like, and John, the thing is, you're in this predicament because of smoking, right? And he said, and we didn't get any complaints because people didn't quite hear him. He said, of course I fucking am. Except his speech was so distorted, you couldn't really hear the F word. But that's what he said. Anyway, we finished the interview and he basically limped off to die, basically. And we finished the program and I was in one of my secret smoking stages and I was 40 years old. And I went back to my dressing room and I reached up onto the top shelf of my wardrobe and pulled my packet of Benson and Hedges down and looked at it. And I took out the 4 or 5 that were left in it and I screwed them up, not for the first time, and flushed them down the toilet. But I knew that was it. I could not allow myself to end like that.
Yeah.
If I could do anything to stop it. And that was it. I never had a cigarette since.
Yeah.
That was the day I stopped.
Mate, that'll do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was nearly 30 years ago.
Oh, mate, congrats. Yeah, man.
How long have you been clean for?
8 years this year.
Good.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks, yeah, I'm doing all right. Me and my wife present a show on Netflix called Love is Blind. We're working together. And we were doing some press for it not too long ago, kind of promoting it. And we kept getting asked the same question. And when I knew you were coming in, I thought, this is the guy to ask this question, because then I might be able to have enough fucking answer to answer them. Because I'm like, I don't know. We get asked, like, what's the secret to a long-lasting marriage? Because we've been married 18 years.
Right.
You know, so how long have you been married?
Well, we got married in 1986. So it's what's that, 96, 2006,
years?
16, no, hang on, it's 96, 2006, 2016. So it's nearly 40 years.
Yeah, nearly 40 years.
Yeah, 30,
so you're the guy they
years.
should be asking this question to. Right.
Well, I think the best answer to that, I can't remember who gave it, was, what's the secret of a long-lasting marriage is not getting divorced.
Yeah.
because that's kind of it. Because all marriages go through their ups and downs and their stress points and their pressure points. All marriages do.
Yeah.
No such thing as a perfect marriage. I mean, I've been on the planet for nearly 70 years. I've never known anyone have a perfect marriage. Whether that's my parents, who had a very good marriage, but it was not perfect.
Yeah.
I think of all my friends, or my family. No, sorry. Great marriages, strong marriages, tough marriages, happy marriages, but perfect? No.
Yeah.
And I think you have to accept that straight away. And have the commitment to get through the occasional rough patch, which is going to happen. So it sounds like a flip answer to say the secret, don't get divorced, but that is actually it in a nutshell.
Absolutely.
It's in other words, it's stay the course and be committed, because it's worth it.
Absolutely.
It's worth
I think
it.
you're so right. It's like there's gonna be tough times. Are you willing to go through the tough times?
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I think there's also.
Well, I mean, it's in the marriage ceremony, for better or for worse.
For better or for worse, for hard times, for richer or for poorer.
Absolutely.
You know, all that kind of stuff. It all does make sense when you think about it. Yeah, they were telling you something with those vows. You know, you should maybe listen to them.
They're warning you.
They're warning you, exactly. That's exactly what they're doing. That's so funny. I've never thought about it like that. When I think about marriage, right, I think a lot of people that were talking to us about it were saying that there's kind of like, you know, it's kind of a partnership. It's a 50-50 thing, right? I was like, I don't know if it is it's supposed to be a 50-50 thing. There's this myth of like everything's 50-50. But for us, like sometimes one of you's got 20%, you know, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, you're going to have to pick up the other 80, you know, and likewise, then it's going to be the next day you're going to have to do this. It's going to be the other way around.
Absolutely.
You know, and it's what happens then when both of you have 20. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, that's when the tough times come in. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
You have to hope, as you say, that you're out of sync.
Yeah.
You know, it's rather than going through the ups and downs at exactly the same pace and level. You actually don't want to be like that, as you say. So one of you has got the strong arm to extend, and the other one can accept it, and vice versa. You're absolutely right. And you have to hope that the conjoined 20% periods don't come along too often.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a very good.
Have you ever
been
through those kind of periods when you're both at 20, or one of you's at 20?
To be honest with you, and I don't want to sound smug, because I'm not, but I think we've been very lucky. I mean, we do have a happy marriage and a committed marriage, and I talk about the ups and downs and the rough patches, and of course they've happened, but I can't think of anything I've ever thought. You know, I've left the house and thought, you know, is this going to last? Is this it? It's never been like that. And obviously I was married before, and Julie was married before, obviously, you know, that's why I'm a stepfather. So we both know what it is to fail. And I certainly, I've always said this, I certainly blame myself for the failure of my first marriage, because I simply got married too young. I was way too optimistic. And
how young were you when you first got married?
21.
Right.
It was just ridiculous.
That's really young, isn't it?
It's too young, and it was very unfair on my first wife, Linda, because I wasn't ready for it, and I was simply not mature enough. I thought I was, but I wasn't, and you know, we both got our fingers burnt because of that. So I was in no rush to get married again and to make the same mistake again. But Judy and I were just very, very fortunate when we met in the newsroom at Granada, that we clicked. We genuinely, it wasn't just that we fancied each other and we got on, we had a sort of, you know, broadly similar sense of humour. It was much, much deeper than that. We really, really were kindred spirits. Journalistically, we were kindred spirits. That's why we worked so well together. We both had the same kind of values and everything. And those things they go quite deep. They're not surface attributes. They go quite deep, really. And they serve you well over the distance. And I think that's, again, another reason why we're still together and still happy to be together. And that's luck. That's the luck of meeting the right person. You know?
So how old were you when you met Judy?
1982, 26.
Right.
But
You got married at 21.
I got married at 21.
So was there anything from that marriage that you kind of learned from to not take into or to take into your next one?
Well, I think the reason that the first marriage failed, I blame myself completely for it, was that I shouldn't have got married at that stage. And it might have been, if I'd met my first wife, Linda, 10 years later, maybe the outcome would have been different. But it was just lousy timing and over-optimism. And I rushed into it. I mean, we were engaged within 2 weeks of meeting. And it was ridiculous.
Wow. Yeah.
Now, Judy and I worked together for years before we even talked about the prospect of getting together. So that was very different.
So I suppose it was not rushing into things.
Yeah, not rushing into it, Even though I was still relatively young, we very much, both of us, took our time. I remember, obviously one of Judy's main concerns, and she said this openly before, was obviously that her kids. They came first, front and foremost in any move that she might make. I remember her saying to me when it became clear that we were falling for each other and we were tentatively beginning to talk about maybe having a life together, she said, "You've got to understand, I come in a 3-pack. It's me and Tom and Dan, and that's the reality." And I took that very seriously. And once, this is before This Morning started, obviously, because we were married by then. But I think by about 1985 it would have been. So we'd been working and sharing our days together at the office for 3 years by then. And we were on the point of deciding to live together. We were both divorced. We were on the point of deciding to live together, so that was about 3 years in. But Judy was really, really concerned that I knew what I was doing as far as being a stepdad was concerned, because the boys were going to live with her. They were living with her. So I went off on my own. I went off to Greece for 2 weeks on a kind of a solo holiday to think about it, because I didn't want to rush. Well, I wasn't rushing, but I didn't want to make that mistake. I didn't want to say airily and with super confidence, "Oh, yeah, it'll be fine. I'm happy to be a stepfather." I needed to know that I could deliver and that I meant it. That I really meant it. So I went away for 2 weeks and just thought, basically sat on a beach for 2 weeks and just thought quite deeply about the future and about how I felt about it. And I felt very comfortable with it. And I went back and told her that. The boys were adorable. They're only 7 at that stage, and they're absolutely adorable. And we went away for a week together, all 4 of us. We rented a cottage in Cornwall, just as a little trial to see how we all got on. And it was fantastic. We had a great time. And that kind of sealed it. So I moved in, we got formally engaged, and we got married as soon as we could.
Wow. Did becoming a stepfather feel like a natural thing for you?
Yes, it did. And you talk about luck. It's partly because of the boys. They were lovable. They were very, very lovable. Very attractive, little blonde, mop-headed lads. Very biddable. I love them to pieces. In fact, Tom's, as we speak, he's at our place with his wife and my 2 granddaughters from Boston. And they've been staying with us for a week. And Dan lives very close by, and we all stay in very, very close touch. And again, luck, absolute luck. They could have been little shits, but they weren't. They were fantastic. So that made it easy.
Yeah, I had a stepdad, and I didn't have the greatest experience with it. And it's only over time I've kind of thought about that. Coming into someone else's, children must be it's not an easy decision to make, is it?
And you've got to be sure that you're up for it. And that and you fought it through. You can't take it lightly, because it's not your life, it's theirs. They didn't ask for their parents' marriage to fail. They didn't ask for you to come along. It's none of it's anything to do with them. So you've got to put them first. You have to. I'm an agony uncle for the Daily Telegraph, and I get quite a lot of letters about step-parenting, and I always say that. The absolute rule of thumb is the kids come first. Everything you decide to do, everything you think about doing, you do it with the kids as your priority, because
Yeah.
it's not their, none of this is their fault. So
Yeah.
you've got to make it work for them.
Yeah, you absolutely do. I mean, when you think about, right, your career and your kind of life, is there anything that you wish you could undo?
The day that my dad died. He died on this day in 1977. I was on my first honeymoon, actually, and I wish, and my last conversation with him was very hurried and rushed. About 4 days earlier, we were staying at my parents' house for a couple of days before going on our sort of slightly disjointed honeymoon down to the West Country, and Dad wanted to talk about stuff, and I was just preoccupied and in a hurry, and basically put him off and said, "Don't have time. Talk to you when I get back from the West Country." Yeah, okay, fine. That was on the Friday, and on the Monday he died. Came home from the office for his lunch, feeling very odd. He said to my mum as he came in through the front door, and a minute later he collapsed in her arms. So I've always regretted not having that last conversation with him. And I know it sounds a bit trivial, but that kind of regret never leaves you.
Yeah, I bet it doesn't.
He was only 49 when he died. He had just a coronary out of nowhere. Hadn't had any history of heart disease, and that took a lot of getting over. I was only 21. You know, that was a heavy blow. That's a regret. You asked the question. It may seem a narrow one, but it's real to me.
Absolutely.
And I wished I could turn the clock back. And sit with him, and say all the things that. I mean, it wasn't even as if he was diagnosed with cancer, and then you get the chance to, have some conversations.
Yeah.
He was just robbed from us.
Yeah, it came out of the blue.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you learn from him about being a parent?
Well, Dad wasn't a perfect parent. I loved him very much, but as I've said before, and I've written about this in our autobiography, he could, because of his own difficulties and his own upbringing, he could run on a very short fuse. He could be very bad-tempered, in very short bursts, and. Back in the day, I was a kid, I was born in the mid-50s and grew up in the 60s. Most parents hit their kids, either with their hands or with sticks, I mean, a lot of my friends at school, when I was at junior school in Romford in Essex, their parents had a stick on the wall, which was there as a kind of a mute threat, and would occasionally be used. And Dad used to hit me with a stick sometimes, a bamboo stick, which bloody hurt. So he wasn't perfect. So what I learned from Dad was, if you like, the things not to do. I always remember thinking, after probably the last time Dad hit me with a bamboo cane several times, I remember thinking, I know I'll never do this to my kids.
Yeah.
I will never, ever, 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 ever hit my kids, ever. Because I knew it didn't do any good. It just made you furious. I mean, it didn't help.
Scared.
Yeah, it just made you scared and furious and resentful.
Yeah.
I was always super confident, absolutely certain that when I became, obviously a step-parent, but then when my own two came along, that was just something which was never going to happen. And I was never going to hopefully lose my temper with them. And I don't think I have. I remember the kind of the strongest discipline that we exerted was in poor old Jack. We've told this story before, but when Jack was very small, 3, 4, 5, he was a nightmare if we went out for a meal. If we went out for Sunday lunch to a pub or a restaurant or something, Jack, he hated it. He just wanted to watch telly and stay home playing with his toys. And he used to kick off in the car on the way there, screaming and shouting and kicking. And we'd go into wherever we were having lunch, and he would make a constant scene. And the only sanction that could eventually stop him would be to say, Jack, if you don't stop this nonsense now, I'm taking you to the car. And that meant taking him out to the car, putting him in his car seat, putting the belt on, shutting the door, and then I would just lean against the car and smoke a cigarette.
Yeah.
And he hated that. And that was the ultimate sanction. That was the nuclear sanction with Jack. But it fell apart one day. We were in a lovely pub up in Lancashire called the Inn at Whitewell one Sunday, and Jack was at his worst. He's about 4 years old. And he was throwing bread rolls and kicking under the table and screaming and just making and throwing the cutlery around. And you could see all these other families in this big restaurant looking across with increasing loathing and impatience. Can't they control this horrible, horrible little kid? So eventually I did all right, Jack, that's it. I'm taking you to the car. And I got up and I picked him up and I put him over my shoulder. I started to weave my way through the tables, and you could see the relief on everyone else's faces. And thank God he's taking him out. I said, "Come on, Jack, we're going to the car." And he's looking behind me over my shoulder as I'm going out from the restaurant. And I suddenly felt him stiffen. And I realised he'd stretched both his hands out behind me in appeal to everybody in the restaurant. And he said, pure theatre this, he said, not the car, Daddy. Please, no, not the car. And everybody's faces changed. And then I could see them thinking, what's he going to do to that poor
What's he
child?
going to do to the car?
Going to tie him to the exhaust pipe and drive off. And I carried on, and I got out into the car park. And the moment we were outside, Jack burst out laughing. He knew what he'd done. He knew exactly what he'd done.
Yeah.
And I must say, I thought it was quite funny.
Yeah.
So we could never use that section again.
Yeah.
But not the car. We still tease him about it. Not the car, Daddy.
Not the car.
Not the car.
Can't wait.
So yeah, I learned. In a sense, I learned. My dad was very loving as well, and very affectionate and very forgiving. And I learned all those things from him. But in terms of the most important lessons, I think they were the negatives. What not to do. What not to do. Stay cool. Keep your temper, and for God's sake, don't touch them.
Yeah. And you were 49 when your dad died, right?
He was 49.
He was 49.
He was 49. I was 21.
That's quite young.
Yeah. I mean, God, yeah. I mean, I remember when I was 49 on August the 8th, this day.
Yeah.
And he died at 1:03 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
I remember sitting. We were in France, actually. I remember sitting on a veranda, looking at the view, looking at my watch, and it got to 1:02, 1:03, 1:04. I was now officially older than my dad when he died.
Wow.
And I realised that I'd actually had a slightly irrational fear that maybe I too would pop my clogs.
That'd be the time.
Yeah, that would be my time. It was weird. It's a stupid thing to even begin to think. But anyway, I always remember that moment as the second hand swept past the 3 minutes past the hour, thinking, okay, all right, okay, and I'm still here.
Yeah.
I've outlived him.
Yeah. But I mean, but that's a big moment. A parent dying. I mean, it's like, I haven't had a parent die yet. But I mean, I can only imagine that's a kind of big moment in your life. Isn't
Well, I
it?
expect. Yes. How old are your parents?
They are in their late 60s now.
Yeah. Well, hopefully they've still got a bit of bit of gas in the tank. But of course, as your parents get older, my mother's dead now, but she died in her early 80s. You sort of accept it. I mean, that's none of us are going to live forever. But when a parent dies young, and particularly without any warning, I mean, my then wife and I, we spent the day on the beach, and we got back to where we were staying, and there was a note. It was long before mobile phones. There was a note we were staying in a caravan, on our caravan door saying, "Mr. Madeley, your mother called. Please call home." I thought, what the hell does Mum want? And so went to the public call box, thinking, what? Nothing. Never suspecting that it was about somebody dying. And Mum answered the phone very calmly and said, "Where are you?" And I said, "I'm in a phone box in Western Supermare." "Why?" She said, "Your father died at 1:03 this afternoon." And bloody hell, I mean, it was like being told that the moon was about to hit the earth. It was just unbelievably shocking. Unbelievably shocking. I mean, no time to say goodbye, to prepare, anything. That was a big seminal moment of my life, as you can tell. Here we are talking about it. Well, that's partly because today's the day, August the 8th. That was a big deal.
Yeah. I mean, how long how do you deal with grief?
You just have to go through it. You have to allow it to wash over and through you. It took me about a year before I felt reasonably normal again. I can still remember the day, actually. I remember every single day it would be on my mind, and I'm sure anyone who's lost someone they love dearly, particularly unexpectedly and particularly young, that will know what I'm talking about. It just sits with you. It sits in your stomach, like a lead ball. And you wonder if it's ever going to leave you. And obviously you're functional. You get on with your life and your job and all the rest of it, but it's there. You're dragging this ball and chain behind you. And then I remember Dad died, as I say, in August, and it must have been about July. I was doing the breakfast shift on the radio, and I came home and it was a lovely sunny day. We lived out in the country, and I went for a walk. And I realised suddenly that for the last half hour, I hadn't thought about him. I hadn't felt what I'd been feeling for the last 10 months, 11 months. I felt normal, and I realised it had gone. It wasn't that I was over it, because you always mourn someone, but that crippling grief had just finally evaporated.
Yeah,
it had been there the day before, but it wasn't there now, and I could tell it wasn't going to come back. I'd gone through it. Whatever the process is, I'd now come out the other side, and it was over. God, the relief.
Yeah, I can imagine. I've had a few people talk about this, which is because a lot of people go through these periods of time where they feel like it's never going to end.
You feel like it's never going to end.
You feel like it's never going to end, but this too shall pass.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
like time will
And it
take
does.
over, and it does
Yeah.
pass. You
Yeah.
can get through it.
Yeah.
Richard, thank you so much for coming on today. Thank you
Oh,
for
I've
being
really enjoyed
real.
talking to you.
Thank you for being real. You know, thank you for being so honest, especially stuff about your parents. I think a lot of people, we get messages about grief quite a lot. So it's a really big subject, which I think a lot of people struggle with.
You just have to, it's like the weather, you know, fuck all you can do about it. You just have to get through it, get through the rain, and trust in the certainty that the sun will come out in the end.
Rich, before you go, something which I took up years ago, which is called a gratitude list. So every day I do 3 things that I'm grateful for, because I can wake up in the morning and be a miserable prick. And I've learned that if I wake up with gratitude and I say 3 things that I'm grateful for today, it can set my day off in the right trajectory.
Okay.
You know, it's been really positive for me.
Yeah.
So we do it with every guest. We come on and we ask them for 3 things they're grateful for today.
Okay, obviously my wife, my children. I mean, this is all so predictable, but it's true.
Yeah. No, these are the big ones.
And I don't have any shame in saying this. My career.
Yeah.
I've had a really enjoyable. I've really enjoyed and still do enjoy my career. It's a blessing. I've been very lucky. I've had breaks. I've taken advantage of those breaks, but I've had breaks. I've had strokes of good fortune. So yeah, those 3 things: children, or wife, kiddies and grandkids, and my career.
Brilliant. Guys, if this episode spoke to you, hit follow, leave us a review, or send it to someone you think might need it. And if you or someone you love is struggling, please know you're not alone. There are lots of support services, which we will link in the show notes. Please go check them out. They might just be the help that you need. Thank you.